Hello, my friends. I hope you're all doing great. These are my Harry Potter themed Create These books that I have finished or partly finished in the past. You have already seen them in my very first video, and I received some comments that you would be really interested in seeing flip throughs of these books, which makes me so happy. So today I want to start with Create This Book 1. The art in there is definitely not my best. I started this, I think, 8 years ago, and I didn't have much practice back then. Also, I was a poor student, so I didn't afford proper art supplies. I just used whatever I could find. For example, I would just use highlighters to fill in backgrounds, which looked awful, but back then it seemed like the best solution to fill large areas. Anyways, the last thing I created for this book was the cover. I did this, I think, 2 years ago, maybe, when I got alcohol markers for the first time, and I recreated the US covers by Mary Grand Prix. Okay, let's take a look inside. So for the title page, I did this checkered pattern with green slime dripping down. I don't know what I was intending with that, but yeah. On the copyright page, I added this pre-movie image of Hermione. And side note, I really love the pre-movie style, so all the merchandise that came out before the first movie hit the cinemas, it was all in this comic style, which makes me really nostalgic. And I tried to add some of this pre-movie style art in the Create This Book, and I got a lot of inspiration out of this sticker album from 2001. But now back to the book. So on the next free page, I added a drawing of Harry and some doodles in the background. The next prompt is the fancy name, pretty self-explanatory. The rule page I made Ministry of Magic themed because that's what reminded me of laws and rules and stuff. And my rule is not so creative, but yeah, I had the symbol that I would add on each page. For the monochrome page, I did some patronuses, I don't know. All right, the likes and dislikes I did from the point of view of Harry. So of course he loves magic and he dislikes, for example, the Dursleys and Snape and so on. The music inspired page I dedicated to the Weird Sisters. This is a band from the Wizarding World, and I based them on the images of the Chocolate Frog cards that you could collect in the first video games. Yes, I printed all of them out and made my own physical collection, so it's fair to call me a nerd. But yeah, if you don't know them, that's what they look like. The next prompt is the page of garbage. I just created some stuff that Hogwarts students might throw away, and I did a drawing of Filch, because as the caretaker, he probably takes care of the trashes eventually. Yeah, of course, for the Create a Pet page, I did Hedwig. The page of polka dots I made potion themed, so the bubbles are my polka dots, and I also added Potion's teacher Slughorn. For the recorded conversation, I chose Snape's memory that Harry sees in the Pensieve, and yeah, it's between the young Marauders, and I also added young Sirius and young James. Here is the array of media. I just drew a pygmy puff with all different kinds of media. This is one of my favorite pages. It's the Create Folds page, and I made this Marauders map, which took me forever. I still remember that. I had a lot of fun on the Create Letters page, because I wrote out Harry Potter in different writing systems. For Create a Meal, I did this Hogwarts dinner with floating candles in the background and Percy Weasley sitting on the table. Here are the simplistic drawings that Draco Malfoy did in the third movie, and then he folded it as origami and sent to Harry. For Create a Family, I, of course, recreated part of the Black Family tapestry. Yeah, this is just some fantasy border. I found some inspiration online for that. And my unusual combo are just those hybrid beasts like the hippogriff or griffin. Then for the record of the week, I did Harry's first week at Hogwarts and also added some of those pre-movie illustrations. For the quick sketches, I did some potion ingredients. Then I did a growth chart of a mandrake plant. And for the collection, I chose the chocolate rock cards from the video games again. For the refusal, which I didn't use, I drew this scene at Madame Puddifoot's where Jo basically breaks up with Harry. And to the instructions void box, I just added some mistletoe contaminated with Nargle. The bumpy page was inspired by the night bus because, quote, it's going to be a bumpy ride. And I also added Stan Shunpike and traced some Harry Potter coins. The page of stripes I filled with Hogwarts house scarves and added Draco Malfoy and Cedric Diggory. On the signature page, I have all the signatures of Dumbledore's army members. And for Create Art with Wax, I did the portraits of the Fat Lady and Sir Cadogan. On the next page, I had to create a pocket by gluing 2 pages together and putting something inside. So my theme for this page was the Hogwarts acceptance letter. So I copied Harry's acceptance letter and put it in the pocket. Or in this case, it's an envelope. My inspiration for the Inkblot prompt was the ink bleeding out of Tom Riddle's diary when Harry destroys it. And then on the stickers page, I just put Hermione and some Lego Harry Potter stickers that I found. My directions were create spells. Not overly creative, but okay. Then my secret is the secret entrance to the Chamber of Secrets that is hidden behind a sink in the girls' lavatory. For the obscure shapes, I chose some weird-looking beasts, the Okami, the Whooper, and the Billywig. And for Create Boredom, I did a History of Magic page. Here's my page of doodles. Then I created a fantasy home in the Black Lake and added one of those ugly mermaids. The page of quotes I filled with Dumbledore quotes. For Create a Print, I did red flowers and added a vampire mosp. This is from the Goblet of Fire video game, and the mosps were attracted by red flowers. On the fabric page, I added lavender brown and Pavati Patil and made Gryffindor scarves out of colorful napkins. Ooh, these are my Harry Potter aliens. Yeah. Well, on this page, I had to create without using my hands. I did this on the left page where I added lip prints, and on the right page, matching the theme, I did some love potion and Romilda Vane. For Create a List of Fads, I chose Pure Blood Supremacy and added this Mudbloods and the Dangers They Pose pamphlet and Lucius Malfoy. For Create Embarrassment, I chose a scene from the second novel, where Lockhart organizes gnomes that would sing a song to your sweetheart, and Ginny made a song for Harry, which was super embarrassing, obviously. The page of checkers, of course, was for wizard chess. Then I made a shared drawing between Harry, Ron, and Luna. This prompt says create plans for a building, so I drew the burrow and added Mr. Weasley and his beloved rubber ducks. On the color combinations page, I gave Tongs different hair colors. And for Create a Progression, I did a devil's snare that's growing uncontrollably and added Professor Sprout. For Nostalgia, I chose the scene where Harry sees his family in the mirror of Erised. Then I did an advertisement for Butterbeer and later also added Madame Rosmerta. Here I did instructions for brewing the Polyjuice potion based on the potion book page you see in the movie. Yeah, my nonsensical creature is the Ferroverto cup with the rat's tail and fur, and I also added Professor McGonagall. This is again from the perspective of Harry himself, because his favorite page would definitely be a Quidditch page. And his least favorite page, the one where he wrote, "I must not tell lies," several times with his own blood at detention with Umbridge. My page of emotion is dedicated to Snape, because I think he went through a roller coaster of emotions, loving and grieving for Lily, loathing James and Harry Potter, and fearing Voldemort. Yeah, here is Create Stencils. The set of twins, of course, were the Weasleys, and I added some of their Weasley's Wizard Weezes products. Here I did some pixel art for Create Straight Lines. For the weather-based decor, I drew the ceiling of the Great Hall, which is showing the weather outside, and added Hermione explaining that fact to Pansy Parkinson. The next prompt is create drawing variation. So I drew Harry in different styles, for example, as a Lego figure. Then for create a person, I chose Albus Dumbledore and added the text from his Chocolate Rock card. For create smudges, I did Molly Weasley using a cleaning spell on dirty dishes. Yeah, then here we have the interview that Rita Skeeter did with Harry at the Tree Wizard tournament. And for create an outfit, I chose Luna Lovegood's outfit and accessories. Then here we have create a switch. So this is the switch from Azkaban Bellatrix to more glamorous Bellatrix. Yeah, next is the fan page. This was extremely tricky because I made it from the perspective of Harry and I couldn't come up with something that he was a fan of, so I ended up with the Tales of Beedle the Bard. Alright, for create a symbol, I did the Deathly Hallows symbol. And for create without thinking, I did Gilderoy Lockhart and his Obliviate spell and some of his books. Here are some paint by numbers, a sneakoscope and a delaminator. Then I created a collage out of Daily Prophet snippings. It's from the article about the Weasleys traveling to Egypt. My obvious flaw was adding cat hair instead of human hair to the Polyjuice potion. Yeah, this was another tricky one. Create an adventure, document things you see on the ground. So I added some stuff that you might find on the ground at Hogwarts, and I added Madame Moody saying constant vigilance. Alright, a page of notes. Here we have some notes Harry might have taken during Umbridge's class or in the library when they try to find out about Nicholas Flamel. And I added some more chocolate pro cards of Flamel and Dumbledore. For the profession page, I added the pamphlets from the careers advice at Hogwarts and focused on the profession of the Auror. Here I drew Crookshanks with my right and then my left hand. And then I created a playlist with Hogwarty Hogwarts, Double Trouble, and Weasley is our king. And here is my contradiction, the evil Lord Voldemort, and the stuttering, timid Professor Quirrell. Yeah, back then I didn't understand what a contour drawing was, so I just drew the contour of my hand and wrote some stuff about palmistry. And for create patterns, I did a wallpaper in the Dursleys' house and hung up some pictures there. Here I created the dialogue between Harry and Tom Riddle in Tom Riddle's diary, and when you open the diary, you go to 13th of June, where Harry travels back in time. I found this image on MuggleNet, I think, and tried to recreate it. For the empty setting, I did Hogwarts Castle from across the Black Lake. Harry's prediction was that he would die next month because he had the Grim in his cup, but when he returned to this page 1 month later, he was still alive. Next is an arrangement of doodles I did while I was in Australia. So not a variety of places like the prompt says, but at least far away from usual. And then for color dispute, I chose the blue fire coming out of the Goblet of Fire. And I added Victor Krum and Fleur Delacour. Here it says create a dedication, and I thought Harry would have dedicated a page to Quidditch. For create something educational, I did a page about witch burnings and Wendelin the Weird, who was so fascinated with stakes that she made herself being burned 47 times. Here is my physical collection of buttons. I arranged them on the sorting hat and added this illustration from the video games where Harry is being sorted. Alright, Harry's favorite cartoon character is probably Martin Mix the Mad Muggle. And if Dobby ruled the world, every elf would be a free elf and Sock Day would be a public holiday to celebrate the liberation of house elves. Okay, a page from the past. So some of my very early Harry Potter drawings and of course a time turner in the background. For unlikely art, I drew dirigible plums and a Mimbless Mimbletonia. And I created chaos with Cornish pixies. I added Poor Neville and pre-movie Gilderoy Lockhart. Here we have create cuts through layers. I made this letter that Hermione receives from an angry Daily Prophet reader. Then for create a combo of 2 of your favorite people, animals, or objects, I combined Remus Lupin and Sirius Black in their animal and human forms. Next, I created the wall between the Muggle world and Diagon Alley, and added pre-movie illustrations of Hagrid and Harry. For create time decoration, I did Slughorn's hourglass and young Tom Riddle, together with some quotes about time. Then my useless superpower is fortune telling, especially when it's done by Professor Trelawney. Here I created textures, including Mrs. Norris and a Jobberknoll feather. Then for create ugliness, I did a mountain troll because it's always stated in the books how ugly they are. Then I created a page for Hagrid's pet, Norbert. Then the next prompt is create an applied suggestion, and Hermione suggested to take notes during today's Transfiguration class. For create something out of nothing, I did a Dementor, because no one can really say how they come into existence. And here is an incomplete scene at platform 9 3/4. Percy is only halfway through the gate, and Mrs. Weasley and Ginny are watching him. Next is create a receipt. Here I wrote down all the prices from the old Pottermore website and added some Gringotts goblins. On the nature page, I just did the Whomping Willow and Harry. And a different drawing for me was the manga interpretation of Ginny and Hermione. Here's a food page with a chocolate frog and Bertie Bott's every flavor beans. And a colorless, ghostly page with Moaning Myrtle and Nearly Headless Nick. Okay, for create a window, I did Ron Weasley in the Gryffindor common room on one side, and yeah, the view out of the window towards Hagrid's hut and the Forbidden Forest on the other side. On the upside down page, I did Ginny hit by the Levicorpus spell, which turns people upside down. And on the blind artwork page, I added the portrait with blindfolded Phineas Nigellus Black from the 7th novel, and yeah, basically created this blind artwork. Then this scrapbook page could be from a scrapbook Harry made, where he wrote down all he knows about Horcruxes, including the letter from R.A.B. that he found in the fake Horcrux. And the contrast I created is between Hagrid and Flitwick. One is super tall and the other is super small. My assessment is degnoming the garden. And I created scenery with this night view of Hogwarts Castle. Finally, my ending is the final battle between Harry and Voldemort, and another page of checkers and slime. So this was my flip through of the Harry Potter themed Create This Book 1. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for parts 2 and 3. Bye bye!